Welcome back to the fourth episode of INaction's How to Fix the World in 80 Days. At this point, it wouldn't be much of a stretch to say that weed should be legalized, but I guarantee you that I am not high when I say that all drugs should be legalized and regulated. So you're probably asking why? Why all drugs? Why can't you just be pro-weed like everybody else? But in the end, the same arguments that back up a pro-marijuana debate also hold true for all drugs. So, let's get started. For all you people who dream of a perfect world without drugs, that yellow submarine has long since sailed. Last year, 243 million people made the choice to get high, and billions more have done so over the past few thousands of years. Plus, they just make people super happy. So the real question is, do we continue justifying the war on drugs attitude, or do we shift towards a policy of legalization? Now, it's a very complicated discussion, so to simplify, let's take a look at the board. Now, I know that there are other anti-drug arguments, but these are definitely some of the big ones, so let's walk these through. First of all, saying that drugs are bad is an opinion, not an argument. It's all about freedom of choice. If I want to put some long-term problems in my body for some short-term enjoyment, I appreciate your concern, buddy, but that's not your problem, it's mine. The gateway theory is another classic anti-drug argument, but you do realize that kids are less likely to get their hands on drugs in a regulated system, right? Who would you rather trust to oversee the process? A store that checks IDs and is subject to government spot checks, or a drug dealer who answers to no one but cash money? Don't believe me? In the Netherlands, 22% of kids aged 15 smoked weed. In the US, 35.8%. Funny that it's less where they sell weed legally. That's weird. Next is healthcare, and it's true. Drugs do some seriously awful stuff to our body. But the problem with an unregulated system is that we have no idea what we're putting into our bodies. If you've ever seen the TV show Breaking Bad, you know that the process of making drugs can involve some seriously nasty chemicals. It's not uncommon for cocaine to be mixed with battery acid and cut with table salt or laxatives. And if you really want to ruin your day, check out a picture of this stuff. But seriously, viewer discretion is advised. If we want to get rid of all this, the best way to do that is to sell drugs with health standards. And finally, the biggie, which is crime. And I agree with you on one thing. If someone commits a crime while under the influence of drugs, they should be charged. But doing drugs itself is not a crime. In some countries, as high as 45% of inmates are incarcerated just for doing drugs. And of course, these people will get out one day, won't be able to get a job, and now the only way for them to feed their family is to turn to violent crime. This is not a cycle we want repeated. Furthermore, cracking down on individual users wastes the time of law enforcement agencies who could otherwise use those resources to go after violent criminals. All of this helps to propagate a $400 billion industry that is being monopolized by organized crime instead of by legitimate tax-paying businesses. Drug running isn't small business, it's Fortune 500. And the sheer volume of it is enough to incentivize millions of very smart people to do very bad things. So let's take a look back at the board. I'm done arguing here. If this doesn't help you get past the anti-drug propaganda you've been fed for your whole life, you're either in denial, you're self-interested, or you must be high. First, we need to accept that prohibition doesn't work for the same reason it didn't work back in the 1920s. People really like getting wasted. So why not try decriminalization? The model to study here would be Portugal, since they decriminalized all drugs in 2001, and by all measures the project has been a complete success. Drug use stayed consistent with EU rates, HIV rates went way down, and crime under drug influence has dropped from 44 to 21%. Great job! Clearly, this is a step forward in the right direction, but for me it just doesn't solve the biggest issue with drugs, which is crime. To do that, you need to cut the problem at the source. Eliminate the black market, sell all these drugs legally. And I know how much it might kill some of you to live in a society that legally sells weed, heroin, cocaine, MDMA, whatever, but it's just better than the alternative. And we do have precedents with legal marijuana. Just look at the Netherlands, Uruguay, and even certain US states. Now, they all legalize marijuana for their own reasons, but the big X factor here is tax dollars. In 2014, Colorado made $44 million off marijuana, and in 2015, $70 million. And they actually used most of this money to fix schools and to fight drug addiction. Instead, we'd rather give that money to drug dealers so that they can buy mansions and fancy yachts. We're so dumb. Let's take the success of these models and apply it to other drugs. A side benefit to selling drugs legally is we can collect health information on what kind of drugs people are doing. Let's say someone comes into the ER with an overdose. It's a life and death situation, pull up their file, find out what kind of drugs these people have been doing, and access this information can save millions of lives. So if you were anti-drug when we started this conversation, it comes down to this. You do not need to like drugs to be in favor of legalization. I hate the nasty stuff that it does to people. Can drugs make people do bad things? Yes. Are drugs in and of themselves bad? Sometimes. But are we 1,000 times better off in a legalized and regulated system? Of course we are. Anyone saying different is just blowing smoke.